Cool. So I'm just going to show you my workflow for editing ski and snowboard photography. I'm going to do this using Photoshop, not Lightroom, mainly because of there's just a few features in Photoshop I can't seem to get in Lightroom, but everyone's got their own process. This is just my one. So I'm just going to open Photoshop here and then go to File, Open, and I'm just going to load my photos straight off my memory card. So I've got my memory card here. Go through to some photos I took yesterday at Hakuba 47 snowpark. There's some really good riders there, so it was like perfect day to get out and take some photos. So I'm just going to go through all of this. I'm looking for something where there's not too much background behind the rider. So like some of these photos here, like you can see they kind of get lost in the sky. I mean, obviously we can edit them to bring them out a bit more, but looking for something with a nice contrast background. But then I don't really want anything that's gonna, I need to emphasize the size of this jump because it was very big. So I need something that's gonna emphasize the jump, emphasize the rider, and then just really show off the scale of what they were doing. So yeah, so here, so I really like these two photos here. So that's really good there. So coming up to the jump, I've got a nice contrasted background so I can see the rider. I can see the amount of air he's got off the lip. And then there's a person there to show scale as well, so you can see how high he is. It's like 1.5 times this person here. So that's like, I think that's a really good composition. I like this one here where you can see his goggles. I think that just shows a bit more. But then I also quite like being able to see the front of his skis, the top sheet, because it's got like a nice turquoisey purple colour. I think that might be better, especially because you can see the goggles and the top sheet there. Even though he's not got the grab, I still think that might be a better photo with a bit more colour. These ones he's kind of losing it a bit, his legs are kind of falling apart, but I think either that one or that one. Maybe this one because it looks like he's got a grab. We'll go with that one. Cool, and then I've got my Photoshop set up so that when I import it, it opens up Adobe Camera Raw, but I'm not going to touch any settings in there. I don't like to edit the colours too much because I like to keep them quite natural. So first thing I'm going to do is convert my image to a smart object. The first thing I normally do, I learned this from Piximperfect. He's a really good Photoshop. I found this on his channel, was to do sharpen, smart sharpen. This is what I tend to do first before everything else. So then I'm going to select my rider there. Basically the amount is the increment size, and then the radius is the amount of that increment. You don't want to have any of this haloing effect that you can see around the rider here. So we want to bring that down until that disappears. When I'm not sure about like an effect, I normally just kind of rack it to the top and the bottom and just keep going back and forth. And I'm not really looking at this preview window, I'm kind of looking at the overall image for this. And then the shadows, so now with the shadows and the highlights, I tend to look more at the whole preview rather than just the preview box. So you can see down here by this flag, it seems to be changing the most, and up here on the left, this person here and this area here seem to be changing the most when I'm changing the shadow tonal width. But I tend to prefer that side because I don't like this pole here becoming too white. But you can see when the tonal width is down, it tends to be more sharp. When it's up, it tends to be less sharp. So I'll leave that like that. I think that's pretty good overall. The next step I do is going into the adjustments, shadows and highlights, and I find this is where like everything kind of pops. I don't tend to like color profiling because I'm not very good at it, but I find this is a good way to edit without making it overdone. So again, I'm just going to kind of go in and then keep playing, going back and forth, seeing which one I like. I prefer the shadows kind of down a bit, but basically I'm just trying to make something that doesn't look too altered. I want it to look kind of natural. So you can see here there's quite a bit of contrast in the snow, which is kind of looking a bit over sharpened. I can fix that in a bit. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then the color, this is kind of like saturation, I guess, and you can see the Coca-Cola sign down here on the left. Just really comes to life. Don't want it to look too pink. And the midtones, this tends to alter the whole brightness of the image. So it tends to wash out the whites a bit. I mean, that looks too unrealistic there. So let's go back and change these settings. I do quite like it a bit darker with a bit more texture on the snow. Then I can bring the midtones up a bit. Okay, so I quite like this. I think this is looking pretty cool. I'm just going to edit the smart sharpen a little bit. I think it's just a little bit too sharp, especially on the highlights. So I'm just going to go to a new adjustment layer, and then I like to do curves, edit the overall brightness of the image. Then I'll do another adjustment layer. This time I'm going to do levels. And then I learned this tip. This is color grading slightly. I'm not very good at it, like I said, but I learned this tip from another YouTuber. I'll try and find it, put it in the description. But I mean, obviously this is good for doing your overall brightness. Yeah, if you separate these and go through each color channel. So red, if you bring up the main area, the shadows, then it removes red from the shadows. And then this slider underneath, if you bring this one up, this adds red to the shadows. So you can do that with each color. So basically, whatever colors opposite each other on the color wheel, I believe. We need to have a look at the color wheel. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so every color is opposite, right? So yeah, so with the red channel, then you slide up the shadows. You're going to be removing red and adding green because they're opposites. And then if you bring up this output level, then that's going to be adding red to the shadows. So you can go through these. So then this obviously bringing down the highlights takes away red from the highlights. And then the whatever this area is called adds red to the highlights. Can't even speak. Let's try the greens. So this will be adding red to the shadows. I don't want it to be too red. This will be taking away red. But I want to keep the snow fairly white, and I want to keep the overall image fairly warm because it was a nice sunny day and I want it to look how it was basically. Cool, I think that looks pretty good. Let's turn it on and off. I'm just going to crop this in a tiny bit. I just stick to the simple rule of thirds, especially for this kind of thing. I've got a nice bit of separation with the chair, with the foreground, and then the skiers in the midground, and then you got the background of the people up on the slopes. But that's okay. It's not too bad. I like that. I don't know if I want it any bigger or not though. Maybe I'll zoom out a tiny bit. Just because I feel like cropping in too much takes away the size of the jump. So maybe I'll just go a bit like that. Maybe just add a tiny bit more back in. So I think what I've done here is I've cropped too many times, and the levels and curves adjustments is on the, because I cropped smaller than bigger, it's only affecting the smaller crops. So I'm just going to undo twice. And just crop again. Maybe just get rid of that guy on the side there. That looks good. Tiny bit more. So I tend to just blur my eyes a little bit as well, just to try and see the composition like as just kind of bold shapes, because at the moment it feels like it's unbalanced. It feels like there's too much weight on the left with all those chairlifts. Although I quite like that girl's face there looking across. That looks kind of cool. But then I feel like that's too, yeah, that's okay like that. Cool, so we've got our crop. I feel like I want to just emphasize the attention onto the skier a little bit more. So I'm going to make a new layer and then get my paintbrush. I've got black selected, I've got a soft round brush, fairly big. So I'm just going to literally just paint around him. And then down here I'm just going to change the layer style to multiply. You could do overlay, but way too much contrast. Let's just do multiply. Then I'm just going to bring the opacity down to like 8. Then turn that on and off and just see how much difference that makes. So that definitely brings our attention to him more. See, it's definitely like lighting him up. Okay, so that's pretty good. I'm just going to do another layer, but this time I'm just going to paint in around the edge of here and just kind of add a vignette. Do the same again, multiply, and turn it on and off. Yeah, there's enough there, maybe turn it down a tiny bit to like 6. So subtle, but I quite like it. Maybe I'll just turn the curves back up again, bring the brightness back up. Just going to bring the shadows down on the levels adjustment. I kind of want to get a bit more contrast back in there. Oh, sorry, bring the shadows up. I do that, there you go. Just going to add a saturation. I'm going to get his skis to pop a little bit more. Let's go to the colours and then cyan. There you go. And then it looks like there's a pink in there as well, so let's go to magenta pink. Yeah. There you go. That's really got the skis popping. Still a little bit contrasty for my liking, so let's get to brightness and contrast. I'm just going to go back into the shadows and highlights panel now and try and adjust, because there's just too many tracks and texture in the snow for me. I'm just going to try and balance that out a little bit. So bring the tone down, bring the amount up again. I know what I'm looking for, I'm just not sure how to do it. So I'm just going to keep playing with these until I figure it out. I'm just going to straighten it up a tiny bit. It feels like it's slightly wonky. Maybe I'll straighten that up there. Just better plug my Mac in before it dies. Okay, so I like that photo so far. After I straighten that photo, there's a little strip along the bottom and the side. For some reason we're just not getting affected by the smart filters. So I'll just crop that out. Still learning, as you can tell, but we're getting there. So this is the camera that I shot the photos on, just a A6000. It's fairly old. Got it from a second-hand market for 5,000 yen. I mean, that's quite lucky. I know they go for like a little bit more than that normally, especially because they're kind of coming back into fashion a little bit. So I use the 16 to 50 standard kit lens. They got it kit lens, yeah. So it's got the standard kit lens with that one. But then I took most of the photos, including this one, using the 18 to 200 version 1. So, I mean, this thing's really good. Find it's a bit bulky, it's really heavy, but I can still get it in and out of my ski pocket really easily, so I don't have to kind of mess about, putting my bag down, unzipping it and taking it all out. Like, I can stick it in my, I have like an anorak style pocket, a bit like this one, fit it into there, and then just, it doesn't disrupt the day, like when people want to keep riding and taking, just, you know, enjoying the snow, then like I can just kind of ride ahead. You know, it takes about a minute or two just to whip it out, get some pictures, and then you know, it's really good. It's got such a nice zoom range as well, so I can kind of zoom in on the action or zoom out to try and get some landscape of the area in as well. But yeah, I mean, it's this lens was wasn't super cheap. I think it was about 20,000 yen. But I mean, it's still cheap for getting started. It wasn't too expensive. Sharp enough for what I do. It's got a good reach for ski photography. I mean, none of this is weather sealed, the lens or the body. I'm not sure about the lens. I'm pretty sure the lens isn't weather sealed, but it's got optical steady shot, which I don't know if it makes much difference with photos, especially shooting at thousandths of a second. Like, you know, you're not gonna get kind of wobbly photos. But yeah, I mean, I've taken out in deep powder and had people spray snow at me by accident, and it's all been fine so far. And I think having an old camera like this, you're not as precious or worried about it. And shot video and photos on this, and like I've always been pretty happy with the results. I'll be dropping a POV video soon where you can see me using it and just see me out on the slopes taking pictures, and then show you a couple edits I've done as well. Okay, so this edit is nearly finished. I'm just a little bit too punchy still. I like this area here with the chairlift and the two guys. Just not a huge fan of the areas around the skier. So we'll turn the contrast up, and then I think I quite like that. Turn the contrast up, and then we'll figure out the highlights. That looks good. I'm just going to do one last layer. So I think the overall image looks pretty good. It just feels a bit unbalanced, especially down in this right hand corner. I'm just going to add a gradient layer. And then change this again. I mean, I try overlay, but overlay tends to make it too contrasty. We'll do multiply. Play with turning it on and off as well. I think that makes it look a lot more balanced. Going to change the angle slightly. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Looks good now. Just change the levels, curves, sorry, to curves back. I tend to, when I edit on the computer, like my monitor looks different to my MacBook, and my MacBook looks different to my phone. So it's difficult to kind of see how bright an image is until you kind of get it onto different screens. And then, especially when you put it on Instagram, it looks completely different again. And then I actually sometimes put another edit on Instagram. But I think it's good to get like a base image down on the computer first and then go from there. I want this corner here to be even darker. I'm going to paint that in again. Filter blur, Gaussian blur, just kind of spread that out a bit. So when you zoom out really far, you can just kind of see like more shape, so it just kind of helps you see whether your effects are actually overdone or not. Pretty happy with that. It took longer than I expected. But again, like I'm still kind of learning, figuring out a lot of these. I didn't know what a lot of these buttons and dials do. I just kind of max them out, turn them off, and just see which one looks better, and then go back and forth, and then eventually we'll figure out in the future whether whether I actually learn what they all do or not. But yeah, it looks good. And then normally I just do Command-Alt-Shift-W because that's easy for me. JPEG, put it on maximum. And then export it. Cool. So I'll show a before and after now on the screen, and then you can see just how much it was worth doing a lot of those edits and stuff. And that's how I'm currently editing my ski and snowboard photography. So yeah, if you liked it, then please leave a like or comment or whatever. And then if you've got any tips or advice, please let us know, because I'm always willing to learn. I need to learn more and speed up the process. Yeah, and I hope you enjoyed it. and stay tuned because I'll be dropping a POV video of me skiing around, taking pictures of people and then doing crappy edits like I just did today. Thanks!